billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Welcome to The Awaited, our show that is dedicated to the 12th Holy Imam. This week I'm with Sayed Ali Khalkhali. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Where we wish to discuss some of the Sunni traditions, traditions that are found in the major Sunni texts that discuss the awaited Imam. Of course, there are a lot of similarities. We just want to see what are those similarities, what are the differences, and where we can find some sort of middle lines that we can see and take from those traditions. To begin with, I was just hoping that you could highlight just some of the most apt traditions from the Sahih Sittah, the main 6 hadith texts from the Ahl Sunnah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان. Peace and greetings to the viewers and to yourself and to our awaited Imam, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten his reappearance and allow us to be amongst the ranks and amongst those who truly follow the commands of the Imam of our time. I'm very glad, first of all, that we are discussing this topic, and I was very interested when I noticed that the topic was being mentioned, because it allowed me to research further into this topic about the ahadith from the Ahl Sunnah, the 6 books of hadith. The 6 books of hadith are Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Sunan Tirmidhi, Sunan Ibn Dawood, Sunan Ibn Majah, and An-Nisa'i. And I managed to find so many ahadith in regards to the awaited Imam that reaffirmed my belief that the Ahl Sunnah, the followers of the book of the Ahl Sunnah, should be more of the same, have the same belief in the Imam of the time that we have. For example, the Imam of the time is by the name of al-Mahdi. For example, the hadith of the Holy Prophet on numerous occasions that the Imams from his progeny are 12. The Holy Prophet would state, al-a'immatu min wuldi ithna ashar, that there would be 12 Imams from the progeny of the Holy Prophet. Also, there would be a statement from the Holy Prophet that Jabir ibn Samra, he narrates that I was beside Rasulullah and I heard Rasulullah provide a statement saying that لا يزال الدين قائمة, the deen shall remain steadfast until there shall be 12 amirs, 12 princes. In another book of hadith, which we'll be mentioning, it mentions 12 khalifas. In another book of hadith, the same hadith from the same reporter, Jabir ibn Samra, it says nuqaba, 12 shining stars, 12 great men, great leaders. Then he says that I heard Rasulullah say a statement that I could not hear. So I asked afterwards, what did Rasulullah say? What did the Holy Prophet say? And his father narrates, or in some narrations says that he asked someone else that kulluhum min Quraysh, every single one of them of the 12 that shall succeed Rasulullah as the Imams, as the Amir, as the Khalifa, as the shining stars, the leaders are from Quraysh. So we know, in accordance to the books of hadith from the Ahl Sunnah, that the Imams, the successors, the leaders after Rasulullah are not 5, are not 6, are not 10, are not 50, are not 30, must and can only be 12. Must and can only be 12. This is one of the ahadith that have been mentioned. Another hadith which has been mentioned, which is in Sunan Tirmidhi, that I found, and in fact last night I even, sometimes when you look at a hadith in the books, you wish to also verify and make sure. So I went also done my own search online and looking at these hadiths. Are they still present in the books today? Because there are many times when they mention a hadith and their reference, and it was from previous publications, and sometimes they edit it or delete it or they move it around. And I managed to find the same hadith are still available today. So for example, in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, volume 2, hadith on page 86, volume 9, page 74-75, chapter 2, kitab number 2, it says, Rasulullah says, رَجُلٌ مِّنْ أَهْلُ بَيْتِ يُوَاطِ اسْمُهُ اسْمِي, that the whole of the earth shall continue and shall remain until there shall be a man who shall be the leader and shall take care of the kingdom. That man is from my Ahlul Bayt, and his name is the same name as my name. The same name as my name. The 12th Imam, according to the Shi'as, his name, when we read the books and when we understand his life, his name is the same name as the Holy Prophet's name. When we say Imam, Hujjat ibn al-Hasan, Imam al-Mahdi, but his name, his actual name, is the same name as Rasulullah, and this has been mentioned in the books of Hadith. Furthermore, it says the same statement that we have also always stated about the role of the 12th Imam. يَمْلَأُ الْأَرْضِ عَدْلًا, that he shall fill the earth with justice and peace, in the same way that it was filled with tyranny and injustice. The Imam shall come forth and fill the world with justice and peace. These are a few of the samples, and inshallah we'll discuss a few more about the hadiths of the 12th Imam.
So, I want to now look at some of the similarities, and initially I want to touch on the hadith that you started off with, looking at the idea that there will be 12 amirs, 12 shining stars. Is there a correlation? Because there is obviously debate who those 12 are. Some narrators will say that the 12 include, for example, some of the caliphs that came after. Interestingly, some of the people that I mentioned even fought one another. So again, there's obviously debate there. However, they say that the 12th one will be this awaited one. Like there's unanimity there.
Fantastic. I mean, in Islam, we also use our intellect and our logic. And before I will go to the actual hadith and the ayat of the Quran, I would like to actually expand on what you mentioned, that these 12 that have been mentioned and agreed upon by both the Ahl Sunnah and the Shia. And the Shia know who the 12 are from the ahadith and the sayings of the Holy Prophet. However, those who state that the 12, the first 4 were from the caliphs, the other 4 were, for example, from the caliphs from the Abbasid times, another 4 were from this time and this time. The question comes, Rasulullah, who was Khatamul Anbiya, the seal of the prophets, the final prophet, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states that Ma atakum al-Rasul fakhudu. When Rasulullah provides you with a command, with a statement, then take it, then take that statement. That statement is a divine message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can Rasulullah suggest and command to us to follow 12 stars, and each of these stars and leaders are different from one another in the sense of their ideology, in the sense of their thought, in the sense of their jurisprudential issues, in the sense of their thought processes, in the sense that they even fought against one another. So if I'm a Muslim and I lived at the time of one of the stars, one of the Imams, one of the leaders, and I fought against another of the Imam, and the other Imam passes away, then the Imam that I was following passed away, then I go to follow another Imam and I fight against the same the same community, the same people that I was defending? No. First of all, aqlan, intellectually, we cannot agree with such a blasphemous statement that we start to add the four to one another, add a few from here, add a few from here. Number one. Number two, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran mentions that the ones that He has divinely chosen as imams, as prophets, as leaders, they have a quality that no one else can have. In the sense that their quality is that they are divine imams. They are divine prophets. They are divine leaders. When we said that Rasulullah mentioned that there will be 12 imams leading after him, this is not Rasulullah choosing who the 12 are. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen who are the 12. Has decided that the 12 are from Amir al-Mu'min Ali ibn Abi Talib till the 12th Imam, the awaited Imam. The 12 Imams are divinely chosen, appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And further alluding in the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states that in previous examples of prophets and leaders and kings, leaders who were sent, that you cannot to the people follow or obey someone who's disobedient, someone who is a sinner, someone who is a transgressor, someone who is corrupt. And according to their understanding of the 12, we have some examples of their leaders who were corrupt people, who were open sinners. And if that person is the leader of the whole nation, then imagine the people who are the followers. That's the second statement. Third statement, we have statements from Rasulullah himself stating who the imams are. And we have a hadith from Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari and other of the companions where Rasulullah himself stated the names of the 12 imams that are following him. And of course, the first thing that we can reply also is Rasulullah himself stated that Amir al-Mu'mineen is the first imam leader, the leader following him. But according to their statements, there's a middle choice where Amir al-Mu'mineen is, and then they're meddling about with the names. And then Rasulullah mentions Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, that they are the leaders. So the imams have been divinely appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know who the 12 are. And when we come to the 12th imam, Rasulullah mentions al-Mahdi min wuldi Fatima. Al-Mahdi min wuldi Fatima. And this is in Sunan ibn Majah, volume 2, Kitab al-Fitan, the book of Fitan, the hadith number 4086. Rasulullah says, the Mahdi, the awaited Imam, the one who shall guide everyone, he is from the sons of the progeny of Fatima al-Zahra. So the Imams, and according to the previous hadith, the Imams are from the lineage of Fatima al-Zahra and the Amir al-Mu'min Ali ibn Abi Talib, who is the son-in-law of Rasulullah.
So this, thanks for the explanation in terms of highlighting the fact that, of course, while, taking the hadith into consideration, the idea that there are 12, there is debate, there is discussion, there is confusion even as to who those 11 are. But again, it comes down to the 12th Imam where there is unanimity. Everyone is sort of has agreement that the 12th is the Mahdi and the son of Fatima al-Zahra.
The 12th is the Mahdi, the son from the lineage of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. And as we are completely aware that the enemies of the Ahl Bayt, were aware that the Mahdi was the 12th Imam from the son of Imam al-Askari. And we can see this very evidently from the way the Abbasid caliphs, they started to maltreat and work so much against the Ahlul Bayt from the time of the 7th Imam, 8th Imam, 9th Imam, 10th, 11th Imam. They started to harass the Imams so much, imprison them, trying their best to not allow the 12th Imam be born. Trying their best, even during the time of the 11th Imam, Imam Hassan al-Askari, they would try their very best. What? They would try their very best to not allow the wives of the Imams to be with the Imam. The female, the lady, the wife of the Imam al-Askari, they would try their best to prevent her being with their Imam. But as we know, and the Quran very clearly states, they plan, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plans. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the greatest of planners, that our 12th Imam was born on the 15th of Sha'ban. And what's so clear is that when the 11th Imam was present, the Imam of the time, the companions came and asked the 11th Imam that we are so aware of the hadith, which is mentioned in many books and references, that whoever dies without knowing the Imam of their time dies a death of the ignorance, dies a death of the jahiliyyah, dies a death as if they are completely away from Islam. So we would like to ask you, O 11th Imam, فَمَنِ الْإِمَامِ, who is the Imam, who is the Hujjah after you? They mentioned that in this hadith, they noticed the Imam, the 11th Imam, he removed the curtain. In his house, he removed the curtain, and they noticed a little young son of his. And he said, this young son of mine, he is the Imam and Hujjah for you all to follow and have complete awareness of after me. That was the 12th Imam, Imam al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan, Ajal Allah Ta'ala Farajah al-Sharif.
Are there any more hadith about the fact that he's from the Ahlul Bayt, or the idea that what is his role when he comes? If you could just highlight some of those hadith.
The Holy Prophet ﷺ states in a hadith, which I would like to clearly read, that in the end of time, my ummah, Rasulullah mentions, will undergo very hard affliction, difficult times, troubled times, times which people never thought of would ever occur to them, not just in terms of economy, in terms of their practices, in terms of the way they are living, like never before, Rasulullah mentions, so that man cannot find any way out. Even according to some hadith, people would be yearning for death. They just want to get away from this world. So much difficulty. Then Allah will appear a person from my progeny, from the progeny of Rasulullah, that is my Ahlul Bayt, who will fill the earth with justice as it was filled with injustice. The inhabitants of the earth and the inhabitants of the heaven love him. The true mu'mineen of the earth, the true mu'mineen who are in the heavens, love this man. One of the characteristics of a true follower of the Ahlul Bayt today is our love for this man, love for the Imam al-Hujjah. And we've discussed in previous episodes what it means to love the Imam of our time. How much should we show our love towards him? Do we truly love him? Rasulullah himself so beautifully says that love towards Rasulullah, love towards the Ahlul Bayt, love towards the progeny, love towards the Imam of the time should be so much in the heart of a mu'min that more than your love towards yourself and towards your own children and towards your own family. Think of it sometimes when a family member that we love so much is 1 hour late to a meeting that we've got with them. Our heart starts to pound faster. We start to try everything to call them. What's happened? We remember them. We call them. We try our best to link towards them. Do we have that link towards the Imam of our time today? On another instance, for example, when we've been waiting for a week for our particular family member to come arrive, we prepare for them, we get everything ready because we know tomorrow they're arriving. We get our room ready for them, we get everything ready because we know someone we love, our family member, is arriving to our house as our guest. Do we have that same preparation for the Imam of our time, showing our love towards him? And a third example that we can give is that we love our family so much. We cannot even bear to think one day without thinking of them. Whether it's in the morning, I think of my family. Whether it's in the afternoon, I think of my family. When my children are at school, I think of them and I wait for them to come back home, or I wait when I get back from work to see my family and my children. But do we have the same remembrance of the Imam of our time in our lives? Or do we leave him just for a few hours on Friday? Or do we leave him for just a specific few moments? Rather, our love for him should be constant, should be always full of awareness. So Rasulullah mentions the inhabitants of the earth and the inhabitants of the heaven love him. The sky will bring down its water everywhere, and the earth will bring all what it can offer and will become green all over. In the sense that there is a return of happiness and peace and the return of the true state of the Muslim Ummah, that the Imam shall return back peace and justice, happiness and success after the world is filled with injustice, corruption.
Hassan. This hadith obviously mentions one of the signs, one of the most obvious signs, one of the most telling signs that we find in both collections of hadith is the idea that the world is full of injustice. If you could touch on some of the signs. In fact, before you do that, one of the things that has just come to my mind, one of the things that I wanted to touch on is the idea that while both schools have the idea of the coming of the 12th Imam, one of the most telling differences is the idea that we believe he is alive, whereas they believe he is yet to be born. Did you find any of this in the hadith?
There are, of course, we've mentioned the hadith that we've stated that he was of the 12th Imam. He's the 12th Imam. Now, and he's from the progeny of the Holy Prophet, and he's from the sons and lineage of Fatima al-Zahra. So these all ahadith are available in their sources of books. Now, so when it comes to the question of how the Imam is alive today, their questioning on this is, how can the Imam be alive for so many years? Because the facts are there for them to see themselves in their books, that the Imam is the 12th Imam from the sons of Fatima al-Zahra. Another hadith mentions the names of the Imams, so that the 12th Imam is the same 12th Imam that we know who was born on the 15th of Sha'ban. But now they start to ask questions that many people may ask, even followers of the Hadith may ask. For example, how can the Imam live for so many years? Now, this can be answered in different ways. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us examples in the Quran of prophets who lived for many years. Prophet Nuh, who his mission in Tabligh was only for 950 years. Not the time, his lifespan, but his Tabligh, his propagation of Islam was for over 500 years, for 950 years. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the world examples before the questioning of the Imam's age, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what He wills is always possible, and we should always submit to that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has willed for us, that there have been examples of those who have lived for over 1,000 years. Another example is Prophet Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, who up to now is over 2,000 years. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raised him to the heavens, and he shall return with the Imam of our time. And even the hadith, it mentions from the Ahlul Sunnah that Prophet Isa shall return and he shall pray behind the Mahdi, behind the awaited Imam. Now what's interesting is there has been some fiddling with some of the translations, that some have translated the Mahdi in their books not as the awaited Imam but as the Savior or the Messiah. So then the question comes that how can Prophet Isa pray behind himself? Does not make sense for you to translate such a hadith
As the
trying
Messiah,
to put the
yeah.
impression that yes, that Prophet Isa returns as the Messiah, but it says that he'll be praying behind the Messiah. So the Messiah is the awaited Imam, the Imam al-Hujjah, who will be leading the Muslim nation. So that's another of the similarities that we have. And then, so Prophet Isa, his age would be also way ahead from the age of the Imam of our time. Then a third answer comes is the Prophet Khidr, which many of the Mufassirin state, Prophet Khidr, or Khidr alayhi salam, that he is also alive. So his age is over thousands of years. And then scientifically, there have been doctors and researchers who have actually proven that if some organs and some cells are given their optimum conditions, in terms of temperature, in terms of nutrients, in terms of the water given towards them, in terms of everything, then they have the capacity of living thousands and thousands and thousands of years until those optimum temperatures are changed and the conditions are changed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has sent down the Imam of our time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has destined that his age is at a particular year. And there is no doubt that whether his age is 100 years or 1,000 years or 5,000 years, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has willed for his age to be of such an age, and there cannot be any questioning about this age. Once we answer these questions and allow them to understand these simple questions about the age of the Imam, that he is alive and he was born on the 15th of Sha'ban, then there are other questions that need to be also verified to clarify for the brothers and sisters.
Excellent. Moving the debate along, I want to now look at, the hadith you mentioned previously was touching on the idea that there will be vast spread injustice to the point that people will wish, like you said, for their own demise. Could you highlight some of the signs of the end times that we find in the books of the Sunni traditions?
The hadith that has been mentioned in the books of the Ahlul Sunnah are similar. Some of them are similar. Some of them do not go into detail that we have mentioned in the previous episodes. But many mentioned the arrival of the Dajjal, the Dajjal, and the occurrences that may occur in the world in terms of the oppression and the injustice. And this is something which is clear in the hadith. Oppression and injustice. Oppression and injustice. And another thing that has been mentioned is that the world shall continue. From the time of Rasulullah, Rasulullah says the world shall continue for years upon years. So there's a length of time, a long length of time from the time of Rasulullah and the time of the end of the world. However, a lot of the details that we have from the signs of the end of time, from the signs of the reappearance of the Imam, some of them are not mentioned, or some of them are different, or some of them are not as clear as the ones that we have in our signs of the end of the time.
Okay. We touched on some of the differences already. I just wanted to look at some more. The idea that about occultation, are there any traditions Because obviously we believe, like we mentioned earlier, that he's alive, or he's in some sort of ghaiba, in some sort of hiding, in some form of occultation. Are there any traditions from the Ahl Sunnah about this idea of occultation in any way? Sort of maybe general, not specific to the 12th Imam or the Mahdi, but the idea that you know, individuals are in some sort of hiding as such.
I mean, the idea of the ghaiba doesn't come just from books of hadith. First of all, go to the verses from the Holy Quran, which is agreed upon by the Ahl Sunnah, the Shia, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the signs of a believer is yu'minuna bil ghaib, is that they believe in the unseen, is that they believe in the hidden. So that according to the Mufassirin, is one of the signs of believing, one of the verses of believing in the awaited Imam's occultation. Now, of course, some of the hadith do mention that the Imam shall go into an occultation which shall be a test for believers, an occultation that shall be for many, many years. And this is a test for the believers, a great test for us to see, are we truly followers of the Imam of the time? Now, these ahadith, not to the extent that they are available in the books of the Ahl Shia that I have found in the books of Ahl Sunnah. Of course, if we can do more research, inshallah, we can see. But there are hadith in relation to, and instances and stories of ghaiba in terms of the hidden or the unseen, or even examples of previous prophets who they went away from the community for some time, they came back, and the whole notion of test that was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the people.
I think, you know, what you mentioned, these are stories obviously from the Quran, where the prophets had left their community in a time similar to what we're seeing now, and then how the people reacted. I think there's a very telling example from the story of Prophet Musa. If you could just quickly elaborate on that story and what we can take from that episode where he went to the mount to collect the Torah. What can we learn from that specifically for this time?
Subhanallah, I mean, Prophet Musa left not for years or years and years, but for days. For days. And just less than 2 months. So these days that Prophet Musa would be away from his community, and he has taught his community, he has given them the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has guided them. But these days that he's left his community to receive the commandments and the Torah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he returns, and during the time that he has left them, they start questioning. They start bringing up their own ideas and their own stories, and some of them bring them their own beliefs which are completely away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is exactly what we are going through today. That vision of Prophet Musa and his time and his community, but expand it to today, where we see today people are testing, not just testing, they're questioning the religion of Islam. Not just questioning, but they are changing their thoughts of what true Islam is, their beliefs in Islam. So much so that the hadith mentions that when the Imam of our time returns, he would be teaching the Quran, and people, the Muslims, would think that this Quran that the Imam is teaching us, the tafsir is so different than what we were thinking or what we were taught, because they were so far away from the true teachings of the Quran. The akhlaq that the Imam shows, the true akhlaq of Rasulullah, the Ahlul Bayt, the true akhlaq of those who are true to the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, people would say, we were far away from the true teaching. And these are tests today that we need to try our very best to verify ourselves, to try our very best to be in absolute command of and obedience to the Imam of our time.
So, um, one thing that I wanted to touch on, this may not come across in the ahadith as such, was just a more of a theological question. Obviously, according to the Shia madhab, the idea that the world will never be without a divine guide. So there will always be a constant link from the time of Prophet Adam to this time. There has always been a divine guide. This is a fundamental tenet of the Shia school of thought, the idea that there will always be someone there. And of course, what we see when we look at the teachings of the Ahl Sunnah, this is different. So if you could just quickly elaborate on this and provide some sort of clear sort of guidance or explanation on that tenet.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's our creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's the most just. Today, if someone was to be in this world and if he has no Imam to guide him and no Quran, then on the judgment day he will say, oh Allah, in 2014 I had no Imam, I had no guide, I had no awareness, I had no Quran. However, we believe that it is the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the lutf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that from the very first day that He created mankind, He had a guide to bring them closer towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to guide them towards the true teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Until the very last day, that guide is available and present. And we also, the followers of the Ahlul Bayt, and this hadith is available and present not just in the books of the Ahlul Bayt, the Shia, but also the books of the Ahlul Sunnah that we've been discussing today, similarities and differences. Rasulullah mentions that I leave behind for you 2 valuable ornaments, 2 weighty things. Kitab Allah wa itrati, the book of Allah and my holy progeny. Now here we need to go further into this hadith. Rasulullah states, ما إن تمسكتم بهما لن تضلوا بعدي أبدا. If you are to truly adhere to the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, the progeny, and the Quran, both of them, you shall not ever be away from the teachings of Allah. You shall not be of the corrupt ones. You shall not be of the unjust ones. You shall not be of the misguided ones. Then we go to our first hadith that we mentioned, that if the 12, if one was asking us to go this direction, one was telling us to go this direction, Rasulullah asked us to adhere to them, then it goes against the teaching of this hadith. These hadith need to collaborate with one another. That the Ahl Bayt, the 12 Imams, are part of the itrati that Rasulullah mentions. Even in another hadith which is mentioned, Rasulullah mentions, al-Mahdi min itrati. The Mahdi is from my progeny. And Rasulullah in this hadith says, my itrati is for you today. Today we have one of the itra. The Imam of our time is one of the progeny, is the progeny of the Holy Imam, of the Holy Prophet and the Quran. So we need today to follow the teachings of the Quran and the Imam of our time, who, if we are to follow these 2 today, then we are of the guided ones. Then we are of the true followers of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall never allow His creation to be for 1 second, for 1 moment, for 1 time without any Imam. Hence, therefore, the question arises that after Rasulullah passed away, his demise, there is no question or an option for some people to wait 3 days, some time, to collaborate with one another to make another Khalifa. Rasulullah himself states that my itra and my Quran, if you were to adhere to them, they are the Imams for you. If you die without the Imam, knowledge of the Imam of your time, you die ignorant death. So after Rasulullah passed away, everyone must know who their Imam is. Straight away, immediately. After the next Imam passed away, immediately everyone must know who their next Imam is. And the 12th Imam, as soon as his father passed away, 11th Imam passed away, here a lot of people start to ask the question that the 12th Imam, when his father passed away, the 12th Imam was only 5 years old. How can a 5-year-old be an Imam? The answers come from the Holy Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us prophets, examples of prophets who were prophets when they were young. For example, Prophet Yahya. آتَيْنَاهُ الْحُكْمَ الصَّبِيَّةِ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the wisdom and the prophet when he was a young child. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the example of Prophet Isa, who was in the cradle, and he was the prophet for the people of the time. And the example of the Imam of our time, as the young 5-year-old, was the Imam of time, and he led the Salah for his father.
And we're coming to the end of the show, but there was one point that I wanted to look at, and maybe get some explanation. Was the idea of the purpose of the Imam. I mean, of course, in both schools of thought, in both understandings, we have the idea that the Imam is coming to rid the world of injustice. We also have in some of our du'a, some of our traditions, that the Imam will come to avenge the death of his grandfather, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Now this, some may say this is, of course, Imam died for Islam as a whole. He didn't die for Shia or for Sunni, for this or that. For all of Islam, the Imam died on the 10th of Muharram to save Islam as a whole. And the idea that the 12th Imam is coming to avenge his death, I'm not sure how mainstream this sort of idea is, or does this go hand in hand with the idea of ridding the world of injustice? But if you could just elaborate on this.
In the short time that we have the statements and the hadith and the ziyarah from the Holy Imam himself, that he would come back with the statement of Ya li tharat al-Hussein, that he is coming back to avenge and to be of the true ones who wish to be in support of Imam al-Hussein salawatullah wa salam alayhi. Of course, Imam al-Hussein and Imam al-Hujjah and all the Imams and the Prophets, all their life and their death was for Islam. But here we go a further significance when we mention this, that the Imam wishes to get rid of those people who are following the enemies of Imam al-Hussein. Because the enemies today that we see in the world today, and the injustice and the corruption that we see, roots and stems from those enemies of Imam Hussein. We can think of it spiritually, we can think of it physically, because people also ask the question, did not Mukhtar kill the killers of Imam al-Hussein? In that sense, yes, Mukhtar did avenge some of the killers of Imam Hussein. Imam al-Hujjah will completely get rid of those who are in support of the enemies of Imam Hussein, who are favoring the enemies of Imam Hussein, who are with the enemies of Imam Hussein, and he would be raising the banner of his grandfather, Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, who he himself sheds tears and remembers in the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein.
And so one way you could put it is the idea that the Imam will come to rid the ideology of what Yazid stood for, the idea of greed, the corruption, injustice.
The ideology, that, yeah. the philosophy of the enemies of Imam Hussein. It's not just a physical war against or battle against the enemies of Imam Hussein. Rather, it takes everything into context. All the philosophical, the spiritual, all those who are against Imam Hussein, in terms of their ideas, in terms of their thoughts, in terms of their tactics, strategy, everything that's against the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Ahsan. It's a fitting end. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have left this week. Join us again where we'll touch on another topic in relation to our 12th Holy Imam. Assalamu alaikum.
كل